Hi there, just a quick note if this is your first time. This is my life story. It's 20 years of addiction, 20 years plus of hard addiction, crack and heroin, and at the end a story of recovery. So watch through the books, it's interesting, you can get engaged in it, and if you caring for an addict, it'll help you understand their minds, and if you are an addict, it will show you that there is help at the end. So let's get on to this chapter. So in book 13, I finished when I had left Liz's house, my ex's house. Well, not left, she had asked me to leave. She had basically kicked me out, which I have great regrets for. She was very good to me. There was strong feelings in that relationship, there really was. But as an addict, I went and I destroyed all of that. I'm quite capable of admitting that I was the reason for the destruction, as I was for the destruction of so many other relationships in my life. Anyway, so I still had the vehicle of this place that I was working, and I had nowhere to go. So what I done is I got in the car and I went through to my sister. This is now my other sister that had my son Jordan. So I turned up at her house in tears and broken down and crying because I had nowhere to go. Again, probably playing the manipulation card. Like I said, us addicts are great manipulators. Playing the manipulation card and getting her to feel sorry for me, and doing what I needed to do to have a place to stay. And look, my sister took me in. She allowed me to stay there. The benefits of this and the wonderful thing that came with this was that obviously my son was staying there, so it gave me time to get to know him a bit, to get to know him and bond. He still didn't know that I'm his dad. He thought my brother-in-law was his father, my sister was his mother, so he still didn't know. So it was difficult. It was extremely difficult dealing with that. But being an addict, I was still using on the sly without people knowing. I was still using, so my emotions were not really in check, and I wasn't feeling much about anything, to be quite honest. I must mention that at this time, through the last 2 books or so, during that period, it could have been a couple of years, during that period my sister, her marriage had unfortunately failed. The ex-husband had moved out then, so it was just her and her kids and Jordan. They were living there. So yeah, I moved in with Talene. Like I say, I kept on drugging. I was doing it on the sly. The drug dealer would meet me outside the house. I would give him whatever I've got. Talene, I'm so sorry. At that time, I was stealing from you. I'm sure you're well aware of it now. I wasn't selling your things, I must admit. I wasn't doing that, but I was going into your bag, and I was stealing money straight from you. At that time you were still doing okay. Money wasn't an issue for you, so I don't think you realized it straight away. But again, same as SKF, it could have ended up being quite a bit that I had taken from you. I regret it. I'm disgusted by it. I feel absolutely terrible that I done it, and I hope you can understand that it was simply my addictive mind just chasing the next drug. I hope you do. I hope you find it in you to forgive me for doing that. If you didn't suspect it and you hear it now, I'm so sorry for that. Yeah, so I was doing that. One morning, I'll never forget. One morning also, I asked if I could use my niece's car, one of Delene's kids' vehicle, and I drove through to Rosettenville. I said I was just going to the shop, so I had to be quick, but I actually went through to Rosettenville, and I was in such a rush coming back. Look, it wasn't my fault, this at all. It really wasn't. But I was in such a rush coming back, and as I was driving up the main road through Rosettenville, it was about 3 lanes in the one direction, and as I'm driving up, I can see far ahead of me, and there's no cars, but I see this guy stumbling across the road. I can see that he's drunk. He had been drinking, he's drunk, and so he was trying to get across the road. And as I was nearing him, I started to see that he's not stopping, he's still coming. So I moved over to the right hand lane, and as I moved over to the right hand lane, he happened to look up and see the vehicle, and I think he got such a fright that he started running. But he didn't run in the opposite direction, he ran into the lane that I was traveling. And unfortunately I hit him with the vehicle, and I'll never forget that day because it was so surreal. The way it happened, it was like everything happened in slow motion. Shame, I hit this drunk gentleman, and he came through the windscreen of the car. You know, so he ended up with his body inside the car and his legs outside the car. Obviously I just pulled over and stopped straight away, and people around got hold of the paramedics and the police and all that, and you know, they came to take him. He was still alive by the time they got there, and by the time they took him away, he was still alive. So I'm not sure whatever happened with that gentleman, but I pray to God that he is okay. I really do. It was genuine an accident, you know, but I pray that he's alright, and it's just one of those things, you know. Then why I'm telling you is because then I went back home, and obviously I phoned my brother to help out. He gave me a lift and whatnot. My sister and him were notified, and they had to get the car towed back there, which it was. But the reason I'm telling you this is to show you the lack of emotion. I was so concerned about the drugs that I had in the car. That's all I could think about. You know, that somebody's going to find it. You know, I was in and out that car looking for my drugs so badly because I thought somebody's going to find it, and I eventually did find it. But I mean, that was my main concern, which is in itself a pathetic act, you know. But again, it's to show you the mind of an addict. Don't think that we have emotions. Don't think that we can think clearly or worry about consequence, because we don't. In active addiction, those things don't mean anything to us. You need to remember that if you're caring for an addict, consequences mean nothing to an addict. So you can't even threaten an addict. You can't say to him, if you do this, I'm going to send you to rehab. If you do this, you're going to go to jail. If you do this, somebody could die. An addict's mind doesn't think that far. All you're thinking about is your next drug. That's all that's important to you. So that happened. Also plays on my mind quite a lot. I see it quite a lot and think about it quite a lot. It was also quite traumatic. And then anyway, I continued living at Deline for quite a while. But like I say, I was using plenty. I mean, the drug dealer would meet me outside or at the shop just up the road, or I would go out and use. So I was using plenty, and on top of that, Michael was also picking me up on weekends and things, and we'd go to his house and, you know, go party at his house. It was through this time where Michael also used to take me to buy drugs, because what happened is when I was staying in Pretoria, which I didn't mention, when I was staying in Pretoria, I was introduced to heroin. But as Susan had passed away now, it wasn't an issue for me to use. So I was introduced to heroin, but I swore I would never inject myself. I would never spike heroin. So what I would do is I would just smoke it. You know, I would smoke it, or I would snort it at work. When I was working at SK in Pretoria, I used to snort at my desk, just a line, just to feel better. And otherwise I would smoke it on tin foil. So it became my downer for the crack. Crack was still my main drug, but if I wanted to come down, then I would use some heroin on tin foil. I would smoke it. And I used to get sick. If I never had it, I used to go through heavy withdrawals. Unlike crack, where it's the mental hanging and the want of the drug, heroin, when it starts getting into your body and you've been using for a little while, it becomes a physical thing if you don't have. It's an opioid. So with opiates, what happens is it's like morphine. So while you're taking it, all your I don't know if your pain receptors they fail, or your pain receptors don't get signal anymore, but you stop feeling pain. So, you know, little sores like a sunburn or a cut on your arm or the flu or anything like that, it doesn't affect you anymore. So your body now becomes totally numb. So the crack was destroying you physically. Now the heroin is destroying you physically, and worse than that, heroin destroys you emotionally. Because let me tell you, heroin is the greatest thief of a person's feelings that you would ever get to meet. You become absolutely feelingless. You feel nothing. You stop dreaming. You feel absolutely nothing. Besides not feeling pain, and that's physical symptoms. You're emotionally, you don't feel love, you don't feel hate, you don't feel kindness, you don't feel anger, you don't feel anything anymore. You basically like a walking zombie, feeling nothing. And as soon as you don't have it, you get as sick as hell. Your eyes will water, you'll start sniffing, you'll start coughing, you'll start throwing up at times, your stomach will be sore, your joints will be sore, everything will be sore because you need the drug so much. And again, you do anything to get it. I think Michael understood this in a way, so Michael used to even take me to go get a bag here and there. Shame things I put him through as well. So I was using heroin also on the sly. Moving on from there, I met this girl at Michael's house. What a rough weekend. Some explicit things that I won't mention on this video, but yeah, myself and Michael, he was having a party. He had moved to another place and he was having a party again at his house, and he phoned me and he said I must come, there's a girl there he'd like me to meet. And I went through, and then this friend of ours, Dalene, she had brought her friend, so we were partying and everything, and this girl was there, Annika, whom I had met, and whom I fell for from, I think it was the way we clicked. She was easygoing, she didn't put any type of pressure on a person, so we got on well and we clicked, and we ended up having a relationship. Jeez, when I think back of all these videos, all the relationships I've had that have failed, it's scary, but it's also nice because it leads up to a beautiful ending. When I met my present wife. But anyway, yeah, so we started seeing each other, and once again, like I always do, as quick as possible, I decided to move in with her, and I moved in with her in this little commune that she was staying in. I went and moved in with her. I was still drugging. She would drug with me at times. Again, I don't think she had the addiction problem because it never ever got to her the way it got to me. She could use once or twice and just decide to stop, where I would have to keep on going until I had no money left. So yeah, we were carrying on like that. I was looking for work, and she was a hairdresser. So things weren't good, things were bad. I was living with her and we were living together. I had a relationship, but I was still destroying myself. I was still using, I was still carrying on. Even though I used with her, there were times that I used that she didn't know about, that I still eat from her. So yeah, then things picked up a little bit. I was working for a friend of mine. He eventually offered me a job, Clint again, in security, doing some work for him. So I was making a little bit of money, and Annika was making money. So yeah, things were okay. Then eventually I started looking for other work, and I found a job at a bearing company. I found a job in a bearing company in Alroad. So now I was working, she was working, and we decided to get a place. So we got a place in Brackendowns, just down the road from my sister, and yeah, we moved in together there. So yeah, that was, look, the relationship didn't last very long. It's not going to be a very long story. It's we didn't live there we didn't even make a year there together, because of my drug addiction. Things were so bad. I was out of control. You must know now, I was living alone, plus I was working. Well, not living alone, living with her, plus I was working. So I was the master of my own destiny. I could do just whatever I wanted or felt like doing. And yeah, this is already 15 minutes into this book. So what I'm going to do is, this is, what did we say? This is book number 14. We are closing up to to me moving into Rosettenville, because Rosettenville I spent a good couple of years. That's when a lot of hurt and a lot of damage was done. So you can follow on along. I like to just get you involved in everything that is happening in my life as I remember. So yeah, I hope you're finding it interesting. Some of it's morbid, a lot of it's morbid, but there is happiness that follows. So again, it's to show you that there is recovery even after 20 years. So to all of those who came back to view, who watched the video through, thank you, really appreciate it. To new viewers, go back and watch the others, and then yeah, thanks again for spending the time with me. Subscribe, at least I can see I'm helping a couple of people, or people are finding it interesting. And I'll see you again for book 15. Thanks, cheers.